Record. All right. Welcome, everybody, back to the High Context Podcast.
Yay, so excited to be here for round two,
Yeah,
episode
today
two.
I'm going to host and interview our other host, Ace Rowe. My name's Darian Wigfall, aka DJ Wiz. Today I want to talk to Ace about all of the contexts, high context, low context, in between. So I'm going to start off with what's getting you high right now?
Right now, it's been these incense journeys. My friend John facilitates these adventures in incense where we get to enjoy a different state of mind with how the incense makes our brain molecules end up. And so when there's this clear psychotropic state of mind, then John kind of facilitates these conversations around what's coming up, we call it incense listening events in a way where we're kind of listening to what comes up for us when enjoying the nice new state of mind. So that's been really cool and has opened a new, ever since I started going on to these incense journeys, I've had very engaging conversations with pretty much everyone I come across. My life definitely feels different. And it's like, we also joke about getting high on frankincense and stuff, but it's not a psychoactive high. It's more of like the next day and the days after feel a bit different.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you feel anything when you're there, or is it more like you feel the effects after you've been?
I feel things when I'm there.
Okay.
Most of the time it's very subtle. It depends on the setting because John, has made this quite accessible, but at the same time, it helps to be in a more enclosed space. And so the last one I was at recently was a more enclosed space, and I was like feeling good tingly stuff around my body and stuff, but it wasn't anything that was like extremely pain relieving or like anything like that, or like
there's no like discomfort or anything when you're there.
The only discomfort maybe if the smell irritates, but often it'll be a subtle irritation.
Okay.
But I've never really felt irritated. I've just heard of that happening. For me, sometimes the mucus will loosen up and stuff, or
really?
the phlegm will loosen up.
Yeah.
And that's a good that's a benefit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a good side effect.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's definitely it's a subtle experience.
During the actual bath.
For the incense journey itself and like afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just been a significant higher vibration.
Yeah.
Like
you're having like profound conversations and.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's not the normal definition of high, I guess.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We do it all here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the traditional or whatever.
I think it opens up to one's mind to more context, to more just acceptance of what's coming up. I've had varied reactions in terms of like my own profound moments or like yeah.
Is it something that you could recreate in someone's home, or does it really need I was going to say, does it need a practitioner that's like a professional or whatever?
No, it's definitely, John is like showing like an entryway into a tradition.
Okay.
And then it's up to you if you want to continue it in your own space. And I enjoy, doing it with the group in those ways. But, part of what he teaches is how the incense has been used in the past traditionally, and how it could be used, how it could be applied
these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's something, it's great when John facilitates because he's bringing up things you may not, choose to think of. But if I were someone who had a space where a lot of people are coming and going, I had a team, I'd want to offer this to them maybe once a year with John, and then once a month just
as a team.
Yeah, as a
Yeah.
team, like getting the equipment, the burner,
Hmm.
the incense,
Hmm.
and I do recognize how it could be seen as like spiritual or religious, but it's,
Hmm.
to me, I think it's like
Yeah.
a practical way of diving into the in between and
Yeah. Yeah, because one time I looked into what incense is made out of, and I was like, what is it made out of? Because it can always smell so different, but it's organic
mm-hmm,
material, so
mm-hmm,
it it also has a vibration, right,
mm-hmm,
at a certain frequency, so maybe it's like helping you tune your own frequency, I
mm-hmm.
would think. That's
Yeah,
very
so I'm
cool.
really excited for the one tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the one I went to last week and the one tomorrow, they're going to be like similar. So I think similar things are going to be covered, but because it's a different setting and different people, it's always going to be different. And
Mm.
this will be the closest that I've gone to two of these.
Okay.
So I just find that interesting. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the similarities and differences between
Yeah.
the two. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I plan to go tomorrow. I haven't. I'm gonna get my ticket when we get out of here. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds really cool.
It's a cool time. And it's something that like I hope to like I like connecting people with it because
Yeah,
it's always interesting what someone walks away with. Like
yeah.
I've seen different, variable. Everyone's different.
And you've had a beneficial experience with it, and you just want to
Oh
share that with
yeah,
people. I feel like.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Life just really felt different
Mm,
after that first one for sure.
very cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so now we're gonna rewind
yeah.
as far back as you want. You don't have to go all the way to like birth, but tell me your origin story the best you can tell
Yeah. So it's like how specific, how broad.
wherever you want
Um,
to go with it.
yeah. Let's see. So I like to like describe my parents a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because my mom, she's really great. She's Virgo,
Okay.
and I think she's just like a really stellar mom. She went to art school at some point, and then was at
Hmm.
one point told like, "Hey, maybe you don't have the talent for this," and she pivoted
Man.
to interior design.
Okay. Wow.
But growing up, we had her art hanging in our home.
Wow.
Like that's some of my earliest memories. I feel like include those paintings. One is a still life of a Sunday, which I think,
Hmm.
thinking about it now, it's like she captured technically a moment,
Yeah.
something melting. Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
like I don't know if she did it based on photography or whatever, but the other one is like a forced perspective of like this path of water,
Okay.
and out of it is like a rose, and inside the rose is the earth,
Hmm.
and then
Wow.
on one side is a grove, and
Okay.
the other side is like, and they're symmetrical in that they're like dun 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 dun,
Mm-hmm.
but there's like a grove of trees, and then buildings, like
Okay.
just like gray, like uniform
Interesting.
buildings, and yeah, so knowing like I hadn't thought about that like painting in a rather long time. I feel like, and then with what we've been doing with high context and the conversations we've been having, it's been really cool to like be like, oh yeah, like this was a visual element
Yeah.
to what I that there's like a spirit there, like an energy to that piece of work
For
that
sure.
I've like been around my whole life.
What was your like general interpretation of the piece?
Just the balance and intersection of society, like of civilization and
Mm-hmm.
nature,
Yeah. Okay.
of in the broad strokes, or
Very
of
cool.
like
Yeah.
urban versus wilderness,
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
very like
Dichotomy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool.
I haven't asked her about it in a long time. I haven't. I mean, I might need to ask her and see if she'd be interested in getting a good picture of it for me for our
Yeah, I was gonna
logo.
say I would love to get a picture of it. I was literally gonna ask you that, but I was like, I didn't necessarily want that in the recording, so like people aren't looking for it, you know.
I'll let me write it down.
Okay, cool.
I'll take some notes as we go along.
I don't want you to have to be beholden to it, but that
Oh
would be cool.
yeah, no, yeah. Her and my dad lived in St. Louis when they were growing up. They actually lived across the street from each other when they
Wow.
were young.
What part of St. Louis? Do you know?
In Clayton.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it was the same place that like my grandma had lived for like 5 decades. She moved in 2021, but like that same house is where my dad grew up, and across the street was my mom's family, like cat like across and diagonally.
Yeah.
And then my mom, her family moved abroad to England and Italy for dad was working in MetLife and
Okay.
selling insurance to expatriates, and so grateful that she had that experience to then encourage like the travel bug in me and my siblings.
Yeah.
So my dad was in the Navy, and they got back together in California like years later and stuff.
Okay. She had moved back to the States.
Yeah, family moved. I mean, they moved back to St. Louis, but they didn't reconnect when they lived in St. Louis again. My mom went to Ladue High School, and my dad to Clayton.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't like reconnect then. It was out in California. And so my dad was in the Navy. They were living in Northern Virginia when I was born, in Alexandria.
Was the military what was taking him around, like from location to location, from California to Virginia, or was that?
Yeah, I would say that's like the main reason for that move. But some people are like, oh, I'm an Army brat, I'm a Navy brat. I don't really take that classification because we didn't move around as a family to different bases or anything like that. We just lived in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you were born and raised in Virginia, correct?
Yeah, we lived in Alexandria when I was born, and then two brothers came along, and then by the time Christopher was about 1, we were making moves to move about an hour south to Fredericksburg, which is where I would say I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Fredericksburg's just one of those colonial historic towns that you can't throw a rock without hitting something historic, really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, growing up around basically the founding of the country, or the areas of the founding of the country.
Yeah, I think Fredericksburg did have like a Capital Virginia or something to it at one point. Yeah, it's right there on the Rappahannock River.
Okay, right on. And yeah, what was your childhood experience like in that area?
I mean, looking back on it, I see it as very like structured, suburban, conservative. Really like positively foundational.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked how relatively connected the neighborhood was, like through the school program and through each of our families. A lot of the families that my parents were spending time with were other people that like were also in military or like contract work adjacent to the military or governmental organization. I mean, I think there's one family where the dad like was marketing in DC, and then one other family the dad was in he worked for the post office, but still all like we were all all the kids were around the same age, so
that's nice.
That's what was like bringing us together.
Yeah.
And my my mom talked to our neighbors across the street and was talking about how she was feeling like out of whack by not like going back to Catholicism, like by not finding the Catholic Church that like really worked with like their beliefs and stuff. Yeah, that fit. She had just heard not great things about the one at the time in Fredericksburg, and so she was talking with Miss Garnett across the street, and was saying like, oh yeah, like having this connection, and Garnett was like, oh, you should come to the church we've been going to, United Methodist Church. Fredericksburg United Methodist Church, they like separate the kids out in Sunday school by grade. Okay. And like my parents were like through the roof about that. So it was such a welcoming community. It was so like it just clicked in. That's for great. Our family. Yeah, so it was something we were going to on Sundays regularly, on Wednesdays for dinner and Bible study.
Yeah, Bible study,
Yeah, and then eventually got old enough for Sunday school on Sunday, or youth group on Sundays.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then I took a leadership role in it in high school. I wasn't really watching like a ton of movies or anything like that, but there was this way of telling the Word of God that like they would use pop culture references that just all
Interesting.
like it really got
Like
me
movies and
interested.
music?
Yeah,
Okay.
like Smallville or like
TV shows? Awesome.
yeah, TV, yeah, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer was
Yeah,
used, like
classic.
yeah, and
Huh.
then the first retreat I went on was just a church retreat. They going to Hanover, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of my favorite spots, favorite memories of going to like staying a weekend in these cabins in the woods in the fall in Virginia, just like picturesque.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first Hanover retreat, the theme was superheroes, and
Okay.
so I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
And then by the time I'm pretty sure 6th or 7th grade, by the time I was a senior in high school, I was like, no one else had gone through that theme, so like we recreated that theme.
Nice.
By the time that we were like leading the youth group, so
Yeah.
that was really really special, like a cool experience and like a nice like having good connotations with
Wholesome.
church.
Yeah.
That we're not like being scared into abstinence or whatever.
Yeah, fire and brimstone and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they were like they definitely were not promoting premarital sex, but it wasn't like
I hope not.
it wasn't like it was like no one was really twisting anyone's arm about it or whatever.
Yeah.
It was, I actually like it was really cool that this was a program that was offered. I don't know how many times it was offered after I went through it, but there was every 2 years they would do, I think it was 7th and 8th grade, they would have like a within the church.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a mini retreat type of thing just at the church to do like sex head. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like
wow.
Through church.
That's progressive for a church.
Yeah. Having someone from like outside of the church to come and facilitate some of it. Mm-hmm. And it was like the students and then the parents would also be a part of it. And then it would spread, be separated into age group and then also male and female. And then like they like it was just the way it was like they kind of all the segments of the demographics, they kind of crossed them and did like covered all of it. Like
that's cool.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know of any churches. My church definitely didn't do that.
Yeah, I kind of realized like in the past couple of years, like like not just overall, but like specifically with this one thing, it's like I had access to this upbringing like in a very like safe manner. And that's not everyone's that's certainly not everyone's experience. Like whether it's a bad experience with church or just a bad experience with like not having like more of a shame culture around sex education.
Man, that's super unique. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that, like that good connection. It's like I was still praying. I was still hoping to get like that tingly feeling when it comes to like connection to spirit. And I wasn't really, feeling the Holy Spirit or didn't even really know what that meant until I went to Florida State for university. And that's kind of where my experience with just learning way more about cultures outside of like that suburban America for sure. Like had like my first... Or, like, I guess I definitely had gay friends in high school, but it wasn't, like, something anyone was talking about or, like, really celebrating or whatever. Yeah. And then also just being exposed to, like, higher forms of consciousness, whether it was cannabis, psychedelics, yoga, like... Yeah. I want to say, like, it was cannabis my freshman year of college, psychedelics the following April, shrooms for the first time, and that's where I was like, oh, I'm really seeing God, like, for the first time, and really feeling, like, connected to spirit in that way. It was, like, a religious moment for me, for sure. And then I went to, like, my first music festival after having my first skateboard injury. And then a week later was doing yoga for the first time.
Did you have to have a cast or, like, what was
No, it was such a mild injury that I was like, I know I needed physical therapy, but I didn't want to go to physical therapy. So I went to yoga instead. And that was, like, my entryway into yoga, which was really cool. Yeah. So that was September of 2012. Okay. Yeah.
Tell me more about, you said you went to a concert not long after you got injured?
Yeah, I went to my first music festival like, kind of worried because it was like I was rushing around a little bit, and that's what caused the skateboarding injury. And it messed my knee up a little bit, but then the festival, it's like you get to go to these open spaces and just kind of sit down wherever and enjoy the show instead of having to stand in a concert hall
Yeah.
for the whole concert or whatever. So it actually like worked out quite well and
Mm.
stuff. And then
Good.
yeah, fell into yoga class the next week and
Nice.
found Anna was like my favorite.
Was this something that was offered on campus, or did
Yeah.
you go to? Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I was offered at the gym.
Awesome.
Yeah, state of the art facility, and like still up to this day, one of my favorite teachers is Anna, and she just really made it really accessible and had just the best cues for it's kind of my experience with her is kind of what I want to offer to the students that I teach in the future and stuff.
Awesome. So you want to teach yoga in the future?
Yeah, I have my 200-hour certification.
Okay.
That happened February of 2020, so the momentum
Nice.
was quite stunted after that. So getting back on the wagon has been trying to get back to where the momentum I was in 2020. Yeah, and so that's a goal that I have for this year because even astrologically speaking, we're kind of back at that point in time, like on the timeline, like. It's been pretty interesting to make that connection.
So did you end up graduating from Florida State?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I have graduated in 2015 with a degree in international affairs with a focus on political science and then a second degree in marketing.
Very cool.
I had a really great education in high school that I had enough AP classes to get the second degree, had enough credit hours for the second degree. And international affairs felt like a choose your own adventure major where I was taking classes I was interested in and I didn't really feel like I was walking away with like a skill.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful, I'm only had a political science focus due to having like a plurality of political science classes. I was taking philosophy and sociology and economics. It ended up that I think the required courses, I think this is how this happened. I think the required courses for international affairs, one of them was listed under political science. And so that's how I ended up with okay, I just needed to take a few more political science courses to get the focus.
That's awesome.
To get the plurality.
So you were already just interested enough in the classes that fit into that box that you had taken a lot of them already?
I mean, yeah, it was just a variation of just one more political science class is how it worked out. I could have done sociology or philosophy or any of those other focuses, and it just happened that was political science. And the classes that I found interesting, were, one was taught by Mr. Romanchuk, who taught this Slavic class, Slavic fairy tales class, and then also Russian cinema.
Yeah.
Those were I found very interesting, and then he was teaching a higher level politics class, which was the study of kind of this. We all exist within these systems, and then there's also power systems at play. So it's kind of studying the algebra of those power systems, of the balance of it all, and kind of formulaically took a look at it, which also, years later I'm realizing that allowed an opportunity to just focus on the solution without the emotional backing of it. So there's where I learned by studying revolution basically in this class through these classes. Studying revolution is how do we have because the system that we have isn't working and it doesn't allow for all to thrive, and realizing that how do you have revolution without violence, because violence then perpetuates the system that doesn't work and provides pain and trauma and suffering and doesn't usher in a system that allows all to thrive. And so the study is my takeaways are a peaceful revolution is creation from within, and creation from within is inherently feminine. And so leaning on the feminine energy structures within our society is what's gonna guide us out of this system that doesn't allow all to thrive.
And then you were coming to these conclusions in undergrad.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I've only completed undergrad,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the 200-hour certification for yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I graduated in 2015 and moved to St. Louis,
Okay.
and
I
and
was
then
gonna
the
say, how
world
did that
went
color?
upside down a year later. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was just a couple of months after, or maybe a month after I moved here, that Trump started running for president,
Mm.
I don't know what it would have been like to be in school at that time,
Yeah.
but I had just kind of, like, university is almost like that mini utopia
Mm-hmm.
of,
For
like,
sure.
we're all on the same page, we all want a better tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all studying to figure out how that can happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we're practicing it in this safe space that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get out of that safe space and I'm like out, not, I really didn't have a network here whatsoever.
Yeah.
My grandma's friends are not necessarily like,
Yeah.
I mean, they're great
Not gonna be your
people.
contemporary, so
Love the symphony,
yeah.
love the art
Yeah.
museum, the botanical gardens, but yeah, not necessarily like thinking the same way I'm thinking either. But yeah, and then out of this mini utopia and into the, it is what it is. This is the world we're
Yeah.
in, and this
This
is
is the real
even
world.
possible.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so that was a huge, like, what is going on
Yeah.
here?
Whew. Culture shock, especially coming
Yeah.
from Florida to St. Louis. Although I do feel St. Louis is kind of has a southern feel to it.
Oh, I
Um,
definitely agree with that. Like, people will get up in arms when I say that St. Louis and Missouri are quite southern.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's like to me, it's like a mix of the South and the East Coast. It's like you get a little
That's
bit
a good
of
way to describe Midwest, I would say.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You get a little bit of
Southern hospitality.
trying to chase what's going on the coast, but the southern hospitality that just is naturally here
Mm-hmm.
is just kind of like, I guess, tempered by that, trying to chase,
Yeah.
the things that New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia have, but and I see that a little bit in Chicago. Obviously, there's a lot bigger market, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like the southern part of it is very prevalent, and you
Yeah.
can't deny it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if you're from St. Louis, you
It's
can't deny
and
it.
and as someone who's not lived here my whole life, like, it's definitely something that's noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I recognize if you're like, no, we're our own thing, and you've lived here your whole life
Mm-hmm.
without having lived in Virginia and Florida. It's like, oh, that's the through line through this is
Yeah.
that southern vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting, like, trying to find my people here, because it's like I didn't make friends with who I was in class with anymore. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't.
How'd you go about
It was
finding people?
hard, man. It
Yeah.
was, and I don't think I really necessarily, like, succeeded very early on.
Mm.
Like,
St. Louis tough city, like very siloed, very cliquey.
it was just like I would talk to people I saw that I was, like, attracted to or interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and start talking to them, and then they'd ask, like, "Oh, what high school did you go to?" And be like, "Oh, I went to
Gosh.
Colonial Forge High School in Virginia." Like, why do you ask? Like,
Yeah, it's our
and
little
then the
game
conversation
to put
just,
you
like,
in our little box.
yeah, exactly. And then the conversation fizzles out because I'd say,
You
or
don't
I'd
connect.
reference my Instagram handle and be like,
Mm.
"Oh, I'm Ace, the girl from space."
Yeah.
Like, but the "where are you from" question has just been kind of weird for me, because I moved here from Tallahassee, but I didn't grow up in Tallahassee. I was going to Florida State there, and I grew up in Virginia and Fredericksburg, but technically I was born in Bethesda, so, like, but my parents grew up here, so I guess I'm from here. Like, it's just
At
been
some
a
level.
weird question to answer, and so
Mm-hmm.
lately I just been leaning in to the from space answer,
Yeah.
because it's like I don't know what answer you're looking for, or,
Yeah.
like, I'd much rather talk about what we're doing than where I've been.
Yeah.
Like, at the same time.
I feel like that could be a good barometer for people, though, for you, because the people that are are more interested because you say you're from space. I think those are your people,
It's
and the
been
people that
funny
are
to
like,
see the.
but no, I really want to know what high school you went to. It's like, okay, you're not.
It's been funny to see when someone is, like, completely turned off by that answer too.
Yeah.
To be like, they're not even
That's sad, but I can
interested
see
to
it.
hear around. Oh, it's happened,
Yeah.
and, like, I also scratch my head when that happens, when it's someone in the creative world.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? And you're like,
Creatives, my creative brain. I know you, and I'm like, ooh, you're from space. Tell me more about that.
yeah,
You know what I
right,
mean? Like,
yeah.
but
But yeah,
yeah,
it's a that doesn't happen very often.
yeah.
But it's just been.
How's the journey been since you've kind of decided to not play the St. Louis game with the
Um,
high school? What high school you went to?
yeah, it reminded me a lot of like this experience I had when I studied abroad.
Okay.
I studied abroad in 2014 in Spain in Valencia.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any Spanish. I was studying Spanish.
Another culture shock.
I had definitely a culture shock as well because the people in my study abroad cohort could have cared less about who I was going into it.
Yeah.
And I was surprised, and it was the first time in my life as an extrovert that I had to learn how to be introverted and be okay and comfortable with it. It was very disarming, alarming. Like, it was not. I was very. I guess it's
against
because.
your nature.
Well, I guess it's because I didn't like. I wasn't ready to. I wasn't going to Spain to be a tourist. I was going there to be like a mini like temporary citizen basically.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's not how the other people in the study abroad like cohort really saw it either.
Gotcha.
Which is like I found to be interesting, but I also like it goes back to something I kind of like sped through. But in high school I had the opportunity to go on these trips with the people to people student ambassador program.
Yo, I was supposed to be part of that. We couldn't afford it, so I never went.
Yeah, and that's why I say it that way.
Year.
It's like I was very fortunate to have
That's
been
awesome.
able to experience it. So
I wouldn't have gone so bad.
Yeah, you have loved
awesome.
it.
Yeah,
you have absolutely.
Tell me
loved
about
it.
your experience.
Yeah, so the student ambassador program, to those who don't know, it was created by Eisenhower after World War II, and realizing like in order to prevent another world war from happening, it's important for others to like. It's important for us to create peace through understanding by sending adolescents abroad to experience life in their way. But leading up to these trips, we go through like 6 months of like once a month meetings where we're meeting for like the whole day and we're learning and we have homework in between stuff. Yep. And like had projects to do.
Like group projects?
There was by the end of the 6 months we were like presenting like something on our own, almost like a science fair project, but it was just like a display board basically.
Cool.
So the first trip I went on was very much like a Western Europe trip. It was Italy, France, and England.
Okay.
And I was just learning French for the first time. For that trip, the project that I did was on Notre Dame, of course.
Okay, yeah. Nice.
The second trip I went on was in Japan.
Okay.
Was 2 weeks in Japan, and the project that I did was fashion. So I did like traditional fashion and modern fashion.
Interesting.
And then I had learned in that process about like the wedding gown ritual. Like they would wear this like huge like cone like head thing.
Okay.
Like a hat. And it would be to ward off the evil eye. And then we went to Japan, and I think the day that we landed, we went to some park in Tokyo, and we saw a wedding, and I was like, I did the project on this, like of all the things. Yeah, I was like. Did
you create pieces with that?
No, it was just studying the customs.
Okay.
I actually have a kimono that was given to me from like my dad and mom had some like family friends in the Navy that were stationed. In Okinawa, I'm pretty sure, and then they had a multitude of kimonos and weren't gonna wear the one that they gave me, and so it's like this. I think it's like a white like wedding day kimono sort of thing because it's got like a long trail and stuff. Yeah.
Huh.
But it's all silk and whatnot. But it's like something I had for years.
Yeah.
And then like had a use for it in that project.
So when you were learning, you just talked about the train. Is that like a traditional thing in Japan, or had that already been there, or were they adopting a European style, or like, did you learn about the like origins of that at all?
Of the
the train on a wedding dress or things like that.
Oh no, didn't really go that deep into. It's just a piece of like clothing that I have. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I didn't dive in too deep into all of that. It was like I don't know the specific story of this like garment that I have,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just been, it was cool at that point to like intersect the past with like the present in
Yeah.
that experience. I still have the kimono.
Very cool.
But going to Japan was very eye-opening to learn even more about Hiroshima and like the
Mm.
atomic bomb and everything.
Yeah. Nagasaki.
Yeah, we didn't go to Nagasaki, but
Okay.
learning about the atomic bomb leading up to the trip, then also knowing already that the Japanese culture just has this huge affinity for Americans
Mm.
and for American culture.
Mm.
And we had already done the first week.
Mm-hmm.
It was somewhere at the beginning middle of the second week where we go to Hiroshima and see the museum and like the specific destruction that still stands,
Yeah.
specifically the library in Hiroshima. Like
Mm.
after having this foreign experience where we feel the love
Mm-hmm.
for the American people and then see exactly the destruction like that decision
American.
caused
Yeah.
at from the United
Military.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the military.
Mm-hmm.
Like and kind of understanding that this whole country, they could have not let that go.
Yeah.
But but
And would have
but
been
there's this love
right
there
in
and there's
doing
this
so.
affinity that at least that's what I experienced was
Yeah.
the positives of that
I think I still see
culture
that in like
interaction.
social media for what it's worth. For the
Yeah.
Japanese folks that I've watched their content, breakdancing, hip hop,
Mhm.
pop
Mhm.
music, it still
Mhm.
seems to be very relevant and loved over in Japan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so that was the mind-blowing thing is that there can be this forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
of like that happened in the past
Yeah.
and we have this opportunity for this new
Now.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really inspiring. I think
Yeah.
that really like to see a whole culture recognize like you're not that action, you're a human and you're a
Mm.
whole country of humans.
Mm-hmm.
Like that really impacted my worldview at an early age. Yeah,
Yeah.
like between freshman and sophomore year of high school.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And then the next year was I had to like pick the trip instead of just going on the trip that my local group was going on
Okay.
to Eastern Europe.
Okay.
So I experienced the summer solstice in St. Petersburg.
Wow.
So the sun didn't
Russia.
set. Yeah,
Yeah.
in Russia, yeah. So it was Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Czech Republic, and Germany.
Wow, that's a lot of countries.
It was a lot. In 3 weeks, it was a lot. And, but, that also included Auschwitz, like really understanding
Ooh.
the extent of the destruction within Europe
Yeah.
of World War II,
Ooh.
and also like having seen where in Eastern Europe, like the for example, the Allied forces bombings
Mm-hmm.
had
Mm-hmm.
occurred,
Yeah.
and recognizing they were an occupied people
Mm.
of the German military, like that was really the combination of those two things
Yeah.
was really big.
Was
Yeah.
that all over Eastern Europe, or was it kind of concentrated in Poland, or like?
Yeah, I think Poland got hit real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot, but also like when we were in the Baltic states, really
Mm-hmm.
recognizing, how recent the Soviet occupation had been in those spaces too. Like
Yeah.
that, I've just found that all very interesting. And like looking back on it now, we were talking about I had moved to St. Louis and then Trump
Mm-hmm.
was running for office. I was in Russia when like Obama was president, and
Wow.
there was, I in 2007 when I first started going on the trips, Bush was in office, and the French people were, like the family I was staying in the homestay with,
Mm-hmm.
the students my age were having those questions about Bush and whatnot,
Mm.
and then there is a different international feel with different
Presidents.
yeah. I'm grateful that I've had when I was abroad in 2019 and in 2022, I didn't really feel any strangeness.
Mm.
But, like, I definitely felt safe when Obama was president, like, abroad. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
They weren't looking at Americans like, oh, you damn American.
And I also think with social media, you know, that difference
Yeah.
of, like,
That's also true. Social media
yeah.
during Bush was not that prevalent, but
Right,
during
not at
Obama was
all.
becoming more
And
prevalent.
and I think hey, I'm sure there's still an ugly American stigma. I don't ever want to embody that. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone from any culture should prance around like that or whatever.
Yeah,
But
for real.
yeah, but it just felt like too with the rise of social media, it's like you're able to separate a human population with the person at the top or whatever,
Right.
or associate those good associations. Like Obama had like
Yeah.
that great
Yeah,
great approval rating abroad and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then by the time, you know, we have Trump, it's like, okay, we now have, you know, there's this big difference of like there's something at the head of this that like
Yeah.
they're subjugated to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you traveled under the Biden administration yet? Outside of the country?
Yeah, 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, to the Netherlands.
Okay. What was that experience like?
It was pretty neutral.
Okay.
You know, it was I think the persistence of like that leader is separate from the people themselves or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I mentioned social media, because I think that's actually like the bigger difference than who's in
Yeah.
but in terms of like that one-on-one interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think like overall safety is, you know, in 2022 COVID was still pretty rampant here in the States, and then it was in the Netherlands, it was the first week I had where I didn't wear a mask the entire week.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
and that it was, you know, it felt safe. Like I feel like they took the measurements very seriously and stuff, and you know, worked as a collective.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's part of the culture in Europe too.
Yeah, that's true. I think American culture is very individualistic in general. But so okay, so you're traveling in high school. Did you continue? Do you continue to stay in touch with people to people, or is like how does that work once you're a certain age? You're
done, for me, it was just at the beginning of my social media like experience. So I didn't really stay in touch with as much as I wish I had. Here, friends from the study abroad or friends from the actual student ambassador groups here and there, not very extensively. The first trip I had a friend from high school that like I'm still in touch with.
Nice.
So we were both that was really cool, really bonding for us.
Traveling that far.
So young too. And then the second trip, my friend Haley, we still stay in touch. And then I think one or two friends from Pennsylvania from the trip to Eastern Europe. And then I also have our tour guide from Eastern Europe. I have her on social media too. And I think she just welcomed a baby into the world.
Oh, wow.
So it's just cool to kind of see her life from afar too.
Yeah. Evolution. So so you're in St. Louis 2015, 2016?
I moved here in August 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. And what have you been up to since you've been in St. Louis?
So I first started working at Eddie Bauer, was kind of spinning my wheels a little bit there, getting some experience, going to shows, like seeing bands that I'd always wanted to see.
Nice.
I grew up playing percussion. Before that was like treble choir and Orff ensemble, of course. Like that was really influential for me. And I played piano a little bit at home, and then did percussion and marching band, but I never learned how to play drums, and I was in like one cover band where I was I was in one cover band playing piano and vocals. We called ourselves the Dark Side of the Muse, because we played Pink Floyd covers and Muse covers and some other covers. Super casual, very casual. But growing up in Virginia, there was really no scene in Fredericksburg. I would have had to go to Richmond or DC or Baltimore. Makes sense. that just wasn't happening with the
That's
ride
tough.
situation,
Yeah.
or
It's a
just
lot
didn't
of
have the
driving.
key into that
Yeah.
culture really. And then Florida State, I went to a lot of shows there, like a lot of shows in Atlanta, and you know, a couple different areas
Road
in
trips.
Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went to, New Orleans like at least once.
Nice.
But, not many tours were going all the way to the east or all the way south to either Atlanta or Tallahassee.
Yeah.
So when I moved to St. Louis, like I immediately started seeing stuff I've always wanted to see. Like my top 5 at the time to see live was like included 3 artists that I like saw within the first couple of months.
Wow.
So I saw, like, a couple days after moving to St. Louis, I saw Foo Fighters.
Wow.
And then a month after that was Rat-a-Tat, and I think a month after that was Coheed and Cambria. And ever since then, I've just been seeing so many shows here that I've always wanted to see. Like, and artists that, like, yeah, it's super casual to see them now, but like from where I was growing up, it was not happening. Like,
and from that dearth of shows coming to your area, it's like Christmas.
yeah, or just the accessibility that like the tickets weren't totally breaking the budget, like, and like the ones here in town that really do, it's like, oh, that makes sense, like, for the most part.
Yeah, and this market does allow for cheaper tickets, it seems, even than other cities, luckily. So
well, I think what happens with that, at least my observation has been, the reason why these like bigger indie names are reasonably priced is because it's during the week.
Oh yeah,
like they're stopping
here
during the week.
Yeah,
and I feel like the weekend shows are filled up with like local talent at this point. Yeah, I was doing college radio at Florida State the like last few months of my senior year.
Very cool.
So then I knew that was something I wanted to continue doing here.
What was your
when
show
I moved
about
to St. Louis
at Florida State?
Well, Florida State, the voice of Florida State, WVFS, didn't have individualistic shows. It was a set schedule, and the students filled the slots.
Gotcha.
And I think that's normal for college radio to have that like evergreen programming, and that every 4 years, or every year basically, the student base is going to be different, and so it's just filling those slots instead of reinventing the wheel every semester. That way, when someone who's lived in Tallahassee, it's like they know when that show is going to be on or whatever. So I really liked that. I really liked the just go in and fill a genre and play around with it in that way, and so there was one program. So my first slot that I was in charge of was 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Monday mornings.
Okay.
And
that's early.
Yeah, and it was 4 hours.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah.
It was so cool. I don't know if it's still like this, but the physical media at WVFS was all organized by date added chronologically.
Okay.
So it was like walking through time when you're walking through the physical media.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that was how I would just pull stuff off the shelves that I thought sounded interesting, or, I recognize that name, but I've never checked it out, sort of thing. So I got pretty good college indie education through that. And then, there was this program weekdays, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. at WVFS called Caffeine A Go-Go.
Okay.
And that one, the only requirement was that you played clean music over 120 beats per minute.
Okay.
Like, the faster the better sort of thing.
Huh.
So that was an inspiration for the morning show I eventually had at KDHX called Sonic Space. Okay. So Sonic Space, we went a little bit more broad by bringing the tempo down to 110.
Okay.
And then having themed shows, which would... I always like to do last Monday of the month with New Music Monday. And then anytime there was a holiday or something else coming up, like some different theme coming to mind or whatever.
Cool. Very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Like how we receive the music and like in what casing, right? Like changes how we connect to it, I think.
Yeah.
Conversation continues. Part 2 of this episode of the High Context Podcast. Stay tuned for more with our side stories, and be sure to connect with us on social media at High Context Podcast on Instagram.